and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf. It has been a mixed bag of activities on the news this week. For those watching the economy, the rate hike of the CBN again this week might have caught their interest. So might have the debate on the president tax bills, which scaled second reading in the Senate. The House of Representatives is taking a more cautious approach to the bills, encouraging their members to consult more before they come to a general debate on Tuesday next week. We intend to delve into some of the controversies that have trailed these bills and other matters, but not before I introduce our guest for the week. Prince Adewole Adebayo was the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party in the last general elections, and he joins us tonight on Hard Copy. Prince Adebayo, welcome to Hard Copy.
It's a pleasure. Good to see you, Maokpe.
Indeed it is. I just want to quickly start from, I know that tax matters is something that it's always very interesting to talk about, but I want to start from an area that we rarely speak to. I mean, we don't get a chance to ask presidential candidates, in the frenzy of elections. It's always about one party saying this, another party countering that. Matters like this rarely make it to the surface. This month, we're going to be doing 16 days of gender activism, which is trying to end sexual and gender-based violence. And that campaign has already started, kick-started in a big way by the Vice President. Also, we had the UN Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, weighed in on the matter as well as other very prominent people in Nigeria. I don't know what your thoughts are around campaigns like this and also perhaps women's rights in the country.
Well, I think basically it's good to start with how it was started in Beijing. That Beijing conference just came to tell the world that women's rights are human rights. So if we summarize all the components of gender-based advocacy and all the campaign for women's rights, it's just basically to say, just recognize the female person as a human being and accord them all the benefits you will accord a proper human being, irrespective of their gender. Of course, there are other aspects that are peculiar to women. For example, if you're dealing with screening of cervical cancer, if you're talking of girl child education, trying to address historical issues that have to do with women having access to entrepreneurship. For example, if you look at our parliament, we celebrate it like a novelty when you have a woman who's a senator or you have a woman who's a governor. And the whole approach to leadership, where the two things you need to access power in our kind of politics, money and violence, they are the things in which women are in short supply. So in dealing with these issues, I think lawmaking is important, advocacy is important, and also making conscious effort to create symbolisms, to see that you saw what the American media did to help the USA over the years, where they brought people like Barbara Waters and so many other people and started to show women casting news, which was a strange thing in those days, of Walter Cronkite and all those people to say, oh, a woman can cast news too, can lead. So all these things should start from when we were quite young. And because in Africa, we did not have a historical basis for gender discrimination. In most things that we held holy, our gods always had goddesses who had better character, had more power. We had many kingdoms where the women would rule, either as regents or as ruling in their own right. Apart from a few minority of cultures in Africa, especially in Nigeria, in most cultures, the women have the right to inherit like the male. And you will find, even in distant past, very many wealthy people were ladies. Whichever civilization you went to, you will find women entrepreneurs who had control of their money and they were employing men. So we don't have that history. I think it was a short time where we embraced Christianity and we started to inherit Western gender stereotypes. And also when colonialism came, a bit of struggle with that, because in 1922, women could vote when we started voting. Apart from northern Nigeria, where women did not vote on the Second Republic, but women could vote, women could vie for office and do whatever. So I think what this present generation needs to do, though, is to go beyond just lip service, which is to have advocacy. It must go into every decision that we make in terms of how we appropriate money in society and emphasis that we put on building things that women worry about. And my years in Singapore made me to know that if you want to get it right with women, you start with early education, quality education, and you start with women because of the differential in the biology of men and women in certain aspects. You make sure that this career starts on time and that they can pick very early because for some reasons which psychologists and other people will explain, women tend to mature faster than men. If you have a boy and a girl, even as twins, you will see that the girl is a little more mature before the boy stop playing around. So to give them the early opportunities, not to have strike in the universities, not to have, when you invest heavily in healthcare, especially preventive healthcare, it impacts women more. And to see that if you have solid infrastructure and things work, and you have rule of law, women will be comfortable, and they will be confident, and they will become highly creative. So that's what I think we will have done in government, and it's never too late for any government to do it. And if they don't do it, if it pleases God that we come in, that will be number one priority.
You have been not quiet. You haven't been quiet since the last general elections. And some people will say that in some ways you have been unflinching in your criticism of this administration. I wonder if that's because you see yourself as an opposition politician, or do you just think that this is something that must be done? Is it because you think you have better solutions, and the solutions which you had, were not really taking a listen? People didn't really listen to them. Why have you found yourself more and more, in the public space, speaking on issues and also criticizing what the current administration is doing?
There are three reasons for that. Number one, the impetus of a citizen is just to look at things. I think about Nigeria all the time. So I believe that many people thinking about it. I was with someone yesterday, a former governor, and we started talking, and I could feel it that he too was having the same sleepless nights that I thought I alone was having. So you think about your country all the time. You think about what happens to water if there's a problem. Do we have enough water? How many boreholes are we drilling in this country? Can we continue like that? What happens to unemployment? What happens to agriculture? What happens to other things? So you keep thinking all the time. So when you talk, people think you talk a lot, but that talk that we voice out is less than 1% of what we think about in our head. So occasionally you want to speak out, especially when it's the incumbent government making it look like, oh, this is so hard to do. You realize that it's because they're not doing it. Second reason why we talk is because Nigerians tend to assume that, oh, there's no alternative. You will find people in government who will tell you, oh, there's no alternative to SAP. It started with Shefala talking about it in 1986. And then recently the vice president said, oh, there's no alternative to what we're doing. And the entire study of sociology, economics, anthropology is that our alternative perspective. There are many ways to do things. So to say to Nigerians also to think that, oh, there's no alternative. No, there is alternative. So whatever step is being taken in government, we will give the government the alternative to say, oh, there's an alternative. I'll give the people an alternative so that if you are fed up, for example, with the government policy, you don't get fed up with the country because that's just one alternative you are fed up with. There's still another alternative. If you are fed up with a political party, you don't say, oh, I'm fed up with democracy. We will let you know, no, if you are fed up with these guys, maybe you should try these other guys. These are the ideas. We pay attention to both ways. Then the third reason is that even though we are opposition, inside our heart, we want the government to succeed. Because coming to your studio this morning, I had to travel, come to your studio today, I had to travel on roads built by an APC government. And part of the road was built by a PDP government. And part of the road was built by military. So just journey from where I was coming from to here, I could see, I travel all the contributions made over time by different forms of government and different political parties and different incumbents or occupants. So we want them to succeed. Recently, I went to the East and I traveled on that road built by President Buhari. Despite my horrified account of his government and all the wasted opportunities, but the fact that he succeeded in completing that bridge, that's one achievement for the country. And I don't have to come and build that particular bridge again. So we, sometimes in opposition, we are probably the only people who can afford to say our mind and to wake the government up from their slumber. So it's not always a case of hostility. It's just to remind them that it's our job that you are doing. And if you're not doing it well, we can suggest better ways to do it. We can wake them up. And sometimes when they are in government, you can be insular because you feel alone there. And also they can be living in a bubble or cocoon, and they might think they are doing well. So when we wake them up, we see sometimes they tend to tweak either their language or they tweak their policies. So we hope that works, even though ultimately our intention is to replace them with a better government, but we want them to do well because they are there now.
Well, you spoke of alternatives. Talking about alternatives, you started your political journey with the Third Force, National Coalition, before you went to the SDP.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what has become of the Third Force? We saw a Third Force that nearly torpedoed the entire process in 2023. But what do you think has now become of? Do you think such a possibility is capable of coming together again for the 2027 elections?
Well, first, the Third Force is important in the sense, even though we didn't succeed, but if we had followed how it was to be done, we would have succeeded. The idea was to, that it's difficult to have more political parties, more tendencies in the opposition going against the incumbent. It is hardly a recipe for success. So what we want to do is to make a very grand coalition that will do groundwork and mobilize Nigerians, because Nigeria is being ruled by a minority. Even if you count all the voters who vote in the election, they still amount to a minority. And we thought that if we tailor our campaign in such a way that we accommodate all opposition tendencies and streamline along certain principles, and then we can have a grand coalition that will now give an alternative. But we failed for two reasons. One, because in building the Third Force, many elements in the Third Force had the same principles, same philosophy, same ideology as those in the establishment political parties. So many of them did not have disagreement on how to run the government. They were just not included in it. They had problems of accommodation, and they became opposition or Third Force by accident. And as soon as the establishment started to reach out to them and accommodate, they felt more at home, and they went there. And secondly, at the end of the day, when...
Is that for the 2015 or 2023 elections?
2023. At the end of the day, when we went to SDP, other people went to Labour, went to other places, it turned out that we were splintered. And because we also had disagreements in terms of ideology, so we're also criticizing one another by giving the incumbent people breathing space. Because when the opposition is at each other's throat, then the incumbent has a free pass. So that's what happened. And so it's my belief that ultimately, if we are going to get a change of direction, not just a change of government, it will mean that change of direction has to come from people who are not part of the establishment, who have new approaches to governance, new thoughts, and things like that. And for 2027, the biggest mistake made in politics is to litigate past elections in future elections. So the lessons of 2023 will not be the lessons of 2027. Because 2027, from what I see, if it's going to be successful, it has to be a referendum on the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. If it's a referendum on the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, it will be a better election for the opposition. But if it's just a rehash of unarticulated ambitions and other things, then we will not have the necessary change that we expect.
Let me ask you about, tax, because you've mentioned that in some of your explanations and, watching what has happened recently. Only recently, I think you were attending a dinner hosted by the Institute of Tax Administration in Nigeria.
Yes, Chartered Institute of Taxation.
Chartered Institute of Taxation. And you criticized, President Bola Tinubu's tax policy as the worst in the history of tax administration in Nigeria. Is that correct?
Well, I gave a speech. I think the newspapers maybe picked that aspect of it. But in my speech, that language was not expressly there. What I did was to let the tax experts know of the best ways to approach the practice of taxation.
You called it dysfunctional, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
You think, is it the current tax administration as is presently being administered, or is it the new tax reform bills in the National Assembly?
No, in recent years,
yes,
I said that our tax administration has been dysfunctional, just like the governance has been dysfunctional.
Okay.
So it's whatever they're proposing now is not even radical enough. It's a small aspect of it.
It's not radical enough.
It's not radical enough because of the fact that first, I started by saying, tax used to be historically imposed by a sovereignty over you. Somebody who conquers you or has power over you will impose tax. But in modern times, taxes are imposed by the people themselves. So these people whom we went to have dinner with, the tax practitioners, they have no power to impose taxation. The power to impose tax is vested in the legislature, whether at federal, state, or local council level. And these legislators are chosen by the people, and they rule based on reporting back to the people. So in Nigeria, we need to understand that taxation is a sovereign activity of the people. So if there is a VAT or VAT or income tax, it is the people who levy it, not the government, because it's done by the legislature. And I also let them know that when they advocate for taxation, they should let the government not assume that higher revenue is always good for the economy. The fact that you used to collect 5 trillion in taxation, now you're collecting 10 trillion, doesn't mean that the economy is getting better. You actually could be killing business along that line, because collecting revenue from taxation is just one of the objectives of taxation. In fact, using taxation to create employment, to stimulate an economy, and to redistribute wealth. If, for example, you found out that a small minority are making huge amounts of money from elections, for example, lawyers like me, we earn millions upon millions from election. Bankers make a lot of money just by being speculation. You could use taxation to redirect some of this income to the less privileged or disadvantaged. So that is a social tool. And I refer them to Chapter 2 of the Constitution that will guide in taxation. So that was my purpose. And I made them know that what we've been doing so far has been as dysfunctional as the way we have been running government. And I reminded them that the taxman should be the most honest person in society.
Now, you have said now that these tax bills are not, the reforms are not deep enough.
Yes.
In other words, you wish they were deeper?
Yes, they need to be deeper, because the way the Constitution is set up, we are set up to have almost an equal society, at least an equal opportunity society. Mm-hmm. And to have equal opportunity, it means that those who have more need to pay more. Mm-hmm.
You have since stated your willingness to pay more.
Yes.
To pay more tax. But
yes.
I'm looking at the fact that even what is being presented has been greeted with some controversy. However, it would seem that, somehow it's still going through nonetheless. I mean, for instance, the bill scaled second reading on the floor of the Senate. It looks like it might make progress in the House if we're to hear how the House has gone about it so far and attempts to try and carry the lawmakers along. For you, do you think that the controversy has been needless?
The controversy has been misguided because first, what you see now is poor politics. It's not about the quality of the bill. It's poor politics in the sense that if you want to give someone a haircut, you need to let them know. You don't just wake up from your dream and you have 3 barbers with clippers holding you down. You say, well, I want to give you a nice haircut. It's your birthday. That's not how you do it. If you want to give someone a good haircut, you talk to them and say, you can do it with a better haircut, and we'll do that tomorrow morning, and the person is ready. So what they want to do, some aspects of the bill, they want to redistribute and reattribute the sources, for example, VAT, that in some part of the country, some states who have more VAT generated are receiving less than they deserve, and some states that are contributing less are getting more. But the algorithm is not clearly stated. So what they should have done was to call National Economic Council meeting, have experts.
As they had. They did have a National Economic Council.
No, they had a National Economic Council meeting where they just discussed it. I'm talking of a proper session dedicated to that. There was a National Economic Council meeting from what I heard, and some states raised that issue. But in coming with this tax bill, normally you will start with that Economic Council. First, you could start with when you go to FAC, when the commissioners come to meet the federal government Minister of Finance to talk. You can start from there. You can go to Economic Council meeting. Then you can go to Council of State meeting and raise these issues. But why I'm bringing all of this out is that it's not every controversy that is actually substantive, because both sides may be wrong. We may be debating what is not relevant. What I think is more relevant in the country is the fact that we are not equitable in the way we handle taxation. That people who earn a lot pay very little. And that people who pay more happen to be people who earn their money at the point of capture. For example, if you're a civil servant, if you are a person who's employed in an organization, you tend to pay more taxes than someone who works, for example, at a construction site. So that is a conversation that we will have been having in our time. But this conversation they are having, some of it has to do with the structure of the federation. And I think it is better if they just come openly to discuss the fiscal structure of the federation, to make us understand that why are we having problems with who collects VAT? Why don't you just make VAT a state tax? If you make VAT a state tax, no state is going to quarrel with you, because what they collect will be based on their ability to collect. And if the federal government wants to collect a portion of the VAT, it's just to have an understanding with the state revenue authority to say that when you collect your revenue, you send us 15%. So a state that collects a lot will send 50% of a lot. A state that collects little or a lesser amount will send 50% of that lesser amount. So some of this tension will not be there.
I don't know how that will work out, but I do think that, perhaps states might even be more, and I understand that used to be the case, but they said it was very chaotic. And in any case, states were also shortchanged. I want to, take you up on the issue of, because you just mentioned the fact that you don't just move to any political party. Some people will argue that perhaps you should have started the SDP should make its mark at a lower level. Local government elections, state government elections, to at least show what is possible in one or two states. And then maybe before they start to think about the center, do you think that your ambition, has been too big for the political party, for the platform that you're on?
No, the fact that historically, this present generation of Nigerians have been the least ambitious in the history of Nigeria. Nigeria itself wasn't the ambition of our leaders. We used to have Zik of Africa. We used to have big things coming out of Nigeria for the black world on what Africa. Nigeria was a country that confronted the Western world on South Africa, or the entire Southern Africa. So we went to Congo to try to defend our people there. We created ECOMOG to maintain peace in West Africa. So you cannot be a leader for the largest congregation of black people in the world and you think small. The only thing is that there's no part of government that is small or big. You can impact on the life of people as a councillor. You remember that President Shehu Shagari, he served as Minister of Economic Planning, he served as Minister of Works, he served as Minister of Finance, and he went back to Sokoto to contest and win and serve as a councillor. So there is no senior or lower level in government. Anywhere you can be of service to the people is important. And for the SDP, we produce local government chairmen, we produce councillors, we produce House of Assembly members, we produce House of Representative members, we produce senators. So, and in our earlier iteration, we produce MK Abiola. If you have a better sense, we'll give you the power, we'll give you the mandate. We don't say, oh, this person has the money, let's give it to the person. No. Over time, the electorate will meet us where we are. We do not want to take advantage of the fact that people have been successful with less ethical approach. People have been successful with personal aggrandizement approach. People have been successful by stoking ethnicity, religion, and some of the soft sentiments. We want to stand where the Constitution says we should stand and raise the people to meet us where we are. We are not taking advantage of their ignorance. We're not trying to exploit their sentiment. We want to do what is right.
Prince Adewole Adebayo, thank you for coming on Hard Copy.
Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
Well, that's the program tonight. We have to thank those who constantly engage with our program. If you'd also like to give us some feedback, please use the handles showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Mao Yusuf.